Hey friends, this year I decided to move to the Kaliningrad region, a Russian exclave tucked between Lithuania, Poland and the Baltic Sea. You know, I'd always been curious to visit. I'd heard so much about the nature here and the region's unusual history, but after spending some time living here, I realized just how much there is to discover. It's a small region compared to mainland Russia, but it's full of little towns that are perfect for a day trip, and each one has something new to teach you. Today I'm gonna visit one of them. Hi friends, I'm in the Kaliningrad region and today I'm exploring a new city for me. It's called Sovetsk, from the word Soviet, and it's the second biggest city in the Kaliningrad region. In the past it used to be called Tilsit, and behind me you can see the very famous landmark of this city. It's called the Bridge of Louise, and actually this river, Neman, is also very famous because here Alexander I signed a peace treaty with Napoleon. This bridge was built 100 years after that to commemorate this date. And across the bridge is Lithuania. And now I can only watch Lithuania from here because to get there you need a visa and it's pretty difficult if you're Russian. Today I'm gonna explore this city. By the way, it's also famous for the Tilsit cheese that was invented here. Yeah, I'm just gonna walk around as always and feel the vibe of the city. So far I was walking around the city center and there was a lot of construction. Probably they're preparing for the tourist season. They were building roads and renovating buildings, which I think is really good. Sovetsk has a really fascinating past. After the Potsdam Conference in 1945, the town, which was then called Tilsit, became part of the Soviet Union. A year later, in 1946, it was renamed Sovetsk. After the war, only about 25% of the town's housing was left standing. Even today, you can still feel traces of German culture here. The cobbled streets and some original German houses have been preserved, but overall, honestly, the town feels mostly Soviet, full of typical Soviet apartment blocks. And that's exactly what makes Soviet so unusual and interesting. Can you imagine a city that looks and feels quite Soviet, even though it's right in the middle of Europe? Well, this is kind of scary. I can see some people on the bridge walking with suitcases. I guess in the past this bridge was a lot more crowded, but now it's empty. But this river is so beautiful, oh my god. I love the nature in this region so much. You know, it's so quiet and peaceful here that I don't even want to leave. I just want to sit here and enjoy the view of the river and the bridge. It's really interesting that on the Lithuanian side there are these little houses, and here on the Russian side, well, there are these old Prussian houses, but also the Soviet blocks. Yeah, that's kind of a statement. Okay, it got a little bit chilly. If you're interested in what my approach is to traveling, well, basically today I just bought a ticket and went to this city. I've read a little bit about it online, but I didn't make any plan of what to see here. So I just came to the bridge. I know that it's the main landmark, and now I'm just looking at the map and just going wherever the map takes me, because you can see like different sites on the map. I saw that there are ruins of the ancient castle, so I went there, but they looked a little bit sketchy because they're somewhere like in a little forest and there were some men sitting there. So I decided not to go because, you know, those abandoned buildings are a little bit creepy sometimes. You know, when it was sunny it was a lot more cheerful here, but now, yeah, it's a little bit gloomy. And I can see that this side of the town that is like right next to the border is very patriotic. There are a lot of Russian flags. I went to have lunch in a cafe and it was a lot cheaper than in Kaliningrad because it's a small town, and I guess now they're developing it so that it can become more touristy. This sign says that here there used to be the house of Queen Louise, and it was a very beautiful building, but in the 17th it was demolished, and now you can see this Soviet building here. But apparently in this building the Queen met with Napoleon. course, many Russian tourists who come to Sovetsk are curious about what remains of the old German life here. One of the main things people come to see here is the tram monument. It's a tribute to the tram system that used to operate in Tilsit from 1901 to 1944. Then there is the Queen Louise Bridge, partially destroyed during the World War II. Only the southern portal has survived, but it still looks impressive. You can also find the ruins of Tilsit Castle from the 14th century, as well as old villas, churches, former school buildings, and even a statue of a moose. Of course, some buildings haven't been restored yet, and not every part of town has been brought back to life. But from what I've seen in recent years, the trend is changing. It feels like Sovetsk is slowly being revived, and I have a feeling more and more tourists will start coming here soon. So I decided to take a little break and sit here by the Soviet building, the Soviet block. The Kaliningrad region is very interesting to explore. There is a lot of history here. You know, I was talking to one friend that I have here. She was born in the Kaliningrad region, and her grandma came here after the war to rebuild the city. She told me that before 2020, in general, the Kaliningrad region wasn't very attractive to Russian people, and in general, there was not much to do in Kaliningrad. There were no cafes or any, spots for young people to hang out, like some interesting and modern spots, because it was so easy for them to just go to Poland or Germany for the weekend and hang out there. People would go to the European Union for a coffee on the weekend. But now it's very different. This region is developing very fast. I think in the last couple of years it's become extremely popular among Russian tourists. More and more tourists are coming here, and the region is developing a lot. And I would say that Kaliningrad is a modern place. There are a lot of things to do there. There are a lot of modern cultural spaces, restaurants that you can explore, museums and all of that. But here in Sovetsk, I guess all this tourist stuff is just coming here. A lot of buildings here do not look very good. I looked on the map. I don't know where young people can go here. Just walk around the city streets, and maybe there is a cinema or something, but in general it looks like a very, very small town. But the history definitely is very interesting here. So I was walking around. As I said before, it's a very patriotic looking place. There was this little street with all these Soviet tanks and war machines or whatever. I'm not an expert in this stuff, but I guess this town had a very difficult history and they just wanted to put it on display. It was interesting that all of these machines are right next to residential buildings, so there are some people living there and they have this view from the window on Soviet planes and tanks. As for the plan, I will just continue walking here. I will just walk around and see what I can find. And also I've noticed that there are a lot of cats here, just like, everywhere in the Kaliningrad region. I don't know why. Oh, the wind. Yeah, the wind is getting stronger. But yeah, there are a lot of cats, which is kind of cute. Okay, let's continue walking. I came to a park. It's next to the bus station. I'm just gonna walk around here a little bit and then catch a bus back to Kaliningrad. I think that I have seen pretty much everything in this town. Probably there are more things to see, but honestly the weather has become not so nice anymore. It's a really interesting place with great history. There is some really beautiful architecture here, and it's so interesting to see this mix of different eras, the Prussian era and then the Soviet era, the modern era as well. I think that the city needs more love. I hope that in the nearest future a lot of buildings will be renovated. It's a nice place and I've enjoyed walking around here, especially the bridge is definitely worth seeing.